Iain Begg is a professor at the European Institute at the London School of Economics and Political Science. Iain, you probably know the EU better than anybody we speak to on TRT World. So to ask you this question might elicit a one-hour lecture. But to keep it as brief as possible, what have been the biggest successes and failures of the EU in the past 30 years?
Well, Adnan, you'll be pleased to hear I was talking to my students just today about all of this. The biggest successes are the creation of the euro, which was, after all, simply a pipe dream in 1992 when the Maastritch Treaty was signed. To move from that to a fully functioning currency, which is the second most significant currency in the global economy, is quite an achievement. Now, I'm sure you will say to me, isn't there a problem that there are all kinds of crises in the euro? Yes, but nevertheless, creating it from zero without a state behind it is a major innovation in global governance. Second, in your package, you mentioned the fact of the free movement, what's called the Schengen area. That too was meant to be part of what Maastricht was intended to achieve. And it's the third area of Maastricht, which is maybe the least satisfactory, which is the attempt to project Europe in the world through having, for example, a European, effectively, foreign minister in the High Representative. That maybe hasn't had as much impact as the architects of Maastricht wanted. But if you allow me just to just go through some of the other things that have happened in that period. As your package said, the EU went from 12 to 27 member states. It saw the collapse of the Soviet Union, the absorption of several countries from the former Soviet Union into the EU. It saw the crisis in the Balkans, the crisis of 2007-8, when we had the global financial crisis, then the sovereign debt crisis in the euro area, and now the pandemic. And the EU has been able to navigate all of these fairly effectively, albeit many times with a lot of tension.
Iain, how does the EU, and I presume that it's an indication of the bloc's strengths, but how does it deal with governments that are actually anti-EU and with leaders, I mean, I'm thinking specifically in Hungary, where Viktor Orban has been described by many other outside countries as not only anti-EU, but Islamophobic and practically a racist. I mean, these are not EU values, quite clearly. How does the EU as a bloc deal with those dissenting voices within its own grouping?
Well, in that particular case, with considerable difficulty because of the nature of Orban as a politician. But he's under a challenge from Brussels and from other EU member states. And the significant carrot that the other member states possess is that the Hungarian economy receives a very significant net fiscal transfer from Brussels, something in the order of 3 to 4% of its GDP. And the reason that quite often Orban backs down when he does something that the others disagree with is precisely that they hold this carrot of the money over him. Yes, there's always going to be dissent in the EU. We had it in Austria in the early 2000s. Austria, then a relatively new member state of the European Union, when they had the initial integration of Haidar into the Austrian government, and it was kind of shunned by other leaders. But it's come back to the centre. I think that the EU's whole point in this is that it's able to bring these values into the discussions in other countries in a way which eventually pulls them back towards the centre rather than allowing extremism.
Yeah, it's interesting. I certainly remember Jörg Haider in Austria. You seem to be agreeing with the package, which said that while the economic successes have been absolutely clear, the political union has not progressed as quickly as some countries would like. Do you think it's that economic success that is going to attract more countries to apply for membership of the European Union? And conversely, do you see some countries thinking that actually at some stage we're going to have to exit this bloc?
Well, let's take the latter first. There is no move anywhere, I think, for an exit. Even people like Marine Le Pen in France have rowed back from their ideas of exiting the EU and following the Brits. So I don't see any momentum for an exit. There is still a number of candidate countries, particularly in the Balkans. In fact, formally speaking, Turkey is still a candidate country, but I think nobody really expects Turkey to make moves these days to join the European Union. So I'd still expect some expansion of the European Union. Where I disagree with something in your previous package was there was never really the aim of having a United States of Europe. One rather glib way of putting it is more a united Europe of states, where the states retain much more of the power than you do in a federal entity like the US, Germany, Australia, or Canada.
What about that idea of bringing more countries in? Do you think there are many eager to join because of the economic benefits?
Yes, it's the economic benefits. It's also the possibility of achieving some sort of political stability, which, let's face it, has worked for much of Central and Eastern Europe and became members. The candidates now range from Serbia to even Albania. And I think there's a reasonable probability that with a bit of adjustment, we'd expect to see 2 or 3, maybe 4 members coming in the next 4 or 5 years. However, they have to conform to the EU's criteria, and that's where a lot of the discussion and negotiation is stuck. Until they meet these criteria, they're not going to be allowed in, however much they might want it.
Iain, I wish I'd been a student of yours while I was at the LSE. A long time ago. Iain Begg, thank you very much indeed.
I'm sure you would have had a distinction, Adnan.
I'm not sure about that, Iain. Thanks very much indeed, Iain Begg.